So today we have Benjamin Hung, which is an owners club member in Pace Morby's many groups, and he also is a man of many talents. Some people know him as a business acquisition guy. I personally think that he has many other virtues, and some of which he's using towards the business acquisition aspects. What people don't quite understand maybe is that you need a lot of traits in order to acquire a business. You have to think on your feet. You have to know how to analyze numbers. You have to know how to look at things not at face value like most people do. And I am speaking from the experience of owning, buying, and dispositioning businesses. So I earned the right to give you guys this type of an analysis. I love his work. I appreciate him as a person because a lot of people are really smart, but you probably don't want to be their friends because they're just not good people. And I've seen them. And Benjamin is just a good person. So I don't just like his work. I also like him as an individual. And I'm just happy to have him. How are you today, Benjamin?
I'm fantastic. And Doran, I appreciate the invitation. I'm so grateful that I can be here chatting with you. And long time no see. Happy New Year, Doran.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you as well. We've been chatting a little bit offline, saying you just came from Taiwan, your hometown. We both are immigrants coming from different countries, and not to speak too much about that, but in general, I feel that as such we are very grateful for so many opportunities in this country, and I want to encourage our listeners to express gratitude because they don't really, I don't want to say they don't really know how good they have it, but in a way they don't. But more importantly, how much opportunity is out there, right? And I want to just kind of segue into talking to you about how you maybe recognize some of those opportunities, and what is your take on how people can find businesses to purchase, maybe.
Sure. And that's an awesome intro questions. I think I think to the end of the day, people need to be gratitude enough to see the opportunities, right? A lot of people come to me and say, Benjamin, how are you finding those businesses to buy? Like, like all I'm seeing are the ones on Biz by Sales, and some broker doesn't even get back to me. Like, how do you see all these businesses? To the end of the day, I believe it's about how grateful you are to see things happening in your world, and it actually linked because when you are, for example, if you're immigrants in the United States, you will realize that you just have exposure to almost the smartest people from anywhere in the world, all gather in the country, try to do good. And the platform that this country provided, freedoms, democracy, and opportunities, is uncomparable. Like, there's no way that you can find a place that almost everybody in the world wanted to come. So um, that was kind of my very first thought when I came to the country when I was 17 years old. I wasn't speaking English well, and to be honest, English was the subject I hate the most before I come to the United States. But after I come to the state, I realized that, hey, you know, you are so blessed to be surrounded by people who try to achieve good things. And so, coming back to business acquisitions, you would realize that there are actually a lot of people trying to do their best to drive a company's growth, and a lot of times the owners run out of times. They are getting to an age that they need to retire. They are getting to a point that they cannot push anymore. But at the same time, they still have a lot of employees that they need to serve. They need to, feed, and that represents like many families, right? If you look from that lens, you will see opportunities all over, all around you, right? When you're out driving, if you see a truck parking on the side, and you're looking at someone trying to fix a truck, a lot of people will think, oh, that's just someone have a truck broken down. But I had one business lead came from that, just by me going down and talk to that person and say, hey, anything I can help with there? And he turns out to be a construction companies, and he was just struggling because her husband was getting sick, and her husband can no longer drive the business forward. So she was struggling with a big medical bill, and at the same time the company cannot run without her husband, right? Right there, if you're trying to help them in a way that they can truly be helped, then there you go, you may get the best deal of the world, right? So that's kind of where I come in. Typically, looking at the opportunities, I usually come from a perspective of how we can serve people better, how we can provide value to people, because that's where the opportunities lies.
So the truck broke on the side of the road, and you pulled to see if they need help. That's how it went down, in essence.
Yes. So essentially, like, it was a lady driving a truck, and she was parking on the side, and she doesn't look like a usual truck driver. So I was wondering. I was like, "Is this your truck?" And she was like, "No, this is my husband's." And I said, "Like, where's your husband? Can your husband help?" And she was like, "No, my husband has been, sick for a long time, whatnot." Right?
Got it.
And
So
at
you
that
asked the question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say that at that moment, like, what's crossed my mind was not to figure out whether it's a company to buy. That moment, I wasn't thinking about whether it's a profit or business. I wasn't going to ask for financials, all that. No, I was just trying to help. Like, okay, like, where do you need to get to right now? Can I give you a ride? And I don't know anything about truck, but I can help you find a towing company and haul your truck away. Do you need that? And
Yeah.
6 months later, that lady called me and say, "Hey, Benjamin, do you remember me?" And she was like, "Now is the time that we want to talk about selling the business. Are you interested?"
Amazing. Amazing. And there's a lot to be said about that. One being something I truly believe in, law of reciprocity. You want to try to help people with no intent of getting anything back. And sorry if it sounds a bit mystical, but the universe will get you help and get you opportunities because you just put good out there. And I just live my life that way. I had a text message yesterday with someone, just giving them the biggest project they ever got in their lifetime, and they were blown away. They're like, "How can I help you?" And I'm like, I don't need you to help me with anything. I am just happy because uh, I was able to help someone I care, and I care about her, and I wanted to do good. I didn't need anything from her. I did, and that's just how I live my life. And sometimes, like yourself, things just happen for us, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think this is one of the many big lesson that Pace taught us, right? It's about what you can do to help, what you can give, right? When you give more, you will gain more, and when you're giving without thinking about getting, then that's when you likely will gain even more, right?
Yeah,
Imagine I approach that lady with a mindset of, oh, maybe she's in crisis, and maybe I can try to grab the company or whatnot. Like, that whole conversation, though, that whole interaction will be drastically different, right? So, like, and also, I was just giving you a story that I did, out of many incidents, and maybe I need to do like 100 of them to have one actually turns into a business buying opportunities. Who knows, right? So, but are you willing to do that? That's the question, right? Are you willing to be the person, to be a go giver, to do that? And that is the biggest lesson I learned from Pace.
100%. And I also think that there's no better joy than helping others. I again, I live that way. I know that you never derive as much joy out of anything, including money, uh, as much as you get from just helping people. We are human beings, and we sometimes miss on that. Like, that's the essence of life, helping each other. We're communal animals, beings, right? And we love communities. We're not wolves, you know. So that's why it feels so good, and I love that and appreciate that about you. Let's get a little bit more tactical. When you look at a business, right? In your opinion, what do you consider to look at? What are the questions you're asking?
So, to be honest, that has changed since the past year when I start my first acquisition. When I just get started, the question I was asking is how much of cash flow that it will generate and what I can do to scale the companies. That is the only two questions I'm asking myself when I was looking at the business.
How much will it generate, or how much it's currently generating?
How much is currently generating and how much I can value it and turn it into, basically. That's the two question I asked when I just started, about 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago. Now, what I'm seeing right now is a little different. The first question I would ask is, where's the bunny? Basically, I'm trying to figure out why is the current business owner trying to sell their babies? Like like right now, I'm looking at business in a way that like each business is actually the owner's baby.
Well,
They
it is, but just for our listeners, when you say what's the bun, you mean what's the pressure point? What's the pain point? Because
exactly
not everyone's community,
right.
yeah, listeners. So you're looking for the pain points, for the things that are, yeah, are hurting them.
Motivation, basically, like
Got it.
why are they selling the business, or why lead them to be thinking about selling the business is the bunny. And the reason why I refer as a bunny is Pace Morby has this bunny story talk about how he helped persons addressing the need, and the true need turns out to be a bunny, and that become a reminder, and that actually turns into the symbols of the peace sign, right? That's actually a bunny ears. So yeah, looking for the bunny is what I have been focusing on right now when I look at a business, because it tells you way more thing than what you would imagine from a technical perspective. Now, let me break it down a little more. If you look at a business and people or other mentors or other coach will tell you that, hey, get the financial, you need to look at the PML, you need to look at their tax return, you need to look at all the balance sheet, and require like 3 or 5 years. If they cannot provide that, then it sucks, don't buy, skip, right? That's typically what you get from other mentor and expert buying businesses, right? But I don't see it that way. Like what I'm trying to look for is understanding what make the seller want to sell will actually help you understand what is hidden behind the financials, behind the PML, behind the balance sheet, right? I was running my creative business acquisition Zoom or Q&A Zoom that I host weekly yesterday. One person came in and asked me that, hey, when you look at, for example, a laundromat, like and its financial, like how do you identify the potential pitfall, or where our typical seller try to trick you and all that? Like just by listening to those questions, you would know that they're trying to make it as a competition, right? They're trying to outsmart the seller to understand, oh, there could be some trick, there's some hidden problem, there's something that I need to be aware and all that, right? But imagine if you find out the bunny, if you find out why the seller is selling, if you understand why the owner is selling, then you essentially be on the same side with them. They will be sharing story with you, and you will understand their life. When you understand their life, you would know, oh, if that is the case, maybe let's check look into the financial. Maybe there is a income that's not reported. There is a expenses not reported, or if there's expenses that should be personal but actually reported in business. It could be. And if that is the case, to be honest, that's your biggest gain. Because on the business financial, it would shows what? It would shows that it's actually less profitable than it actually is, because it include the seller's personal expenses.
Yes, and to reiterate, these expenses are called add backs, which are owner's expenses that he runs in the business for the sake of paying less taxes, right? So if we have an owner that basically has two cars, his and his wife's, and they each has a $300 car payment, then he'll run monthly $600 car expenses in the business, uh, basically making the bottom line revenue less by $600 a month time 12 a month, which is I think like $8,200 a year on an annual level.
Hmm.
So what Benjamin is saying is that if you really understand the real picture versus competing for the truth, because as the old saying goes, buyers are liars, sellers are worse, which is kind of segueing me to a bit of a more questioning about that, because most people that have either bought businesses or looking into buying businesses and end up not pulling the trigger very quickly learn that they can ask all the questions they want, but at the end of the day, are they getting the truth, right? Like, are they really getting the reason why the owner is selling? Because,
Exactly.
like you just mentioned, what if they're losing money? What if there's a big problem that you're not aware of? So what is your tactics against or to remedy, because I'm trying not to, I'm
Yep.
playing with words here, not to use the word against, because you're saying it's not a competition, them against us. I want to be on their side, and the listeners
Mhm.
should be on the seller's side if they want to indeed make a successful acquisition.
Right.
So yeah, talk to us about that, please.
Sure. Yeah. So it's about how you look at the whole acquisition process. Um, if you come from a real estate perspective, a lot of time you look at it as a sellers and buyers, right? And but in business acquisitions, and let's put the business broker on the side, right? Both seller and the buyers would love to see the business grow. Like I have never talked to a business seller that doesn't care about the business survival or not. Every single of them want to see the business continue growth and even scale to the level they cannot even imagine. So right there, it's your point for you to team up with the seller and figure out what is the best plan to first understand quickly how the business is doing. Second, from the buyer perspective of fresh eyes, what are we currently doing that should change, that we can value add and scale the business further. Number three, okay, once you identify those changes or those action that should be taken, what can the sellers or the current owner help? Does like there's a lot of things the current owner can help, right? Providing a seller finance note to reduce the burdens of the business, so the business can actually put the money back to work to grow. Number two, it could be like the seller just stay on to provide some more technical knowledge and help you inherit the relationship with the vendors and the employee and all that, right? So when you come from this direction, it's about what the buyer and the seller can help to grow the business. It's not about, oh, how I can get more money selling the business, or how I can pay less to get the business, right? Now, Quickly touch on the broker. The business broker is the only person in the transaction trying to get a chunk of money out of the transaction. This is why I've no longer wanted to get involved into a transaction with the broker involved, because it has a misalignment on what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, but when you're looking for businesses like in Buy Biz or whatever, that the websites that are out there to sell businesses, they're usually represented by
Yeah.
brokers. So where would you go to find those type of businesses that are selling?
Yeah, so we actually just covered lead generations, in one of our Zoom, but there are 7 ways that you can source deals. Um, and of course, like looking at biz by sell is one. Typically, there's broker on. You may also find business owner trying to list their business on biz by sell. Like it doesn't necessarily have a broker all the time. And second, what I am currently doing, and I've been very open to public about that, was I go on Google Map. I essentially just go on Google Map into the area where I'm trying to find a business to buy, and I will look into, okay, how good they are marketing themselves, right? Like what the website look, what is their reviews, what is their Google business profile, what is the profile on Yelp, what is their exposures on SEO and all that. Those are things they can quickly find from desktop or your laptop, whatever. But my approach would be, hey, if I happen to be in the area, I would just request a service from them, or I would just buy a product from them. A lot of time, again, the business owner is always thinking about how do I scale the business instead of how do I sell the business. Now, do you think they will be more interested in talking to a potential business buyer, or they will be more interested in talking to a potential client?
Well, I believe the answer is a client. But before we get into that, when you check the visibility, how good of Google reviews they have, or Google listings, or marketing, or website, or all that, what are you actually doing by doing so?
Sure. So what I'm seeing is, okay, what are the one that are underperformed and why, right?
Okay.
If their website is poor, why? Do they short staff, or do they just too old, not even thinking that's important?
And how do you
Or
know?
by engaging with the seller eventually? Those are the questions you need to write down when
Okay.
you engage in the conversation with the seller. Those are things that you learn. You don't necessarily just ask, but you can you can find out, and you need to find out.
So you
And I,
see their website is not nice, it's really bad, or they don't even have one. And then
Mhm.
what do you do with that information when you get on the phone with the owner? You ask him why?
No, I get on a conversation with them and say,
Okay.
hey, can I be your client by asking you to come to my property, give me a quote on XYZ? For
Mm-hmm.
example, a landscaping company, hey, I am looking to build a patio. Can you come in and give me a quote?
Okay.
They will show up and they will
Yep.
give you a quote. And then from there, you can figure out, number one, who is the one showing up? Is that a business owner?
Mm-hmm.
If that's a business owner, now the question would be, oh, are you the only one doing it? Do you have other staff? If
Yeah.
you do, then are you the main person who give quotes? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is your role in the business? This is like right here, you can expand, right? You can learn a lot more about the business just by having that conversation, right? Number two, you can also like look at the truck that you drive. When it hit your property, you can see, okay, the truck is, for example, it's old and not being well maintained. Now the question would be, oh, is that your working truck? Like how long have you owned that truck for? And is it a good truck? Like I'm thinking about potentially buying one. Should is that a reliable truck or whatnot? Right? Listen to what the business owner have to say. Then you will learn a lot about the business owner. And when you engage in those conversation, it's no longer about the projects. It's going to be more about the relationship between yourself and the business owner. And then during those conversations, you can say, "Oh, I happen to be interested in learning how a landscaping company make money and potentially buy one." Now it's naturally deliver that information out, and you plant the seed. The business owner may be selling or may not be selling at the moment, it doesn't matter. You plant the seed, it will come back to you when he was thinking about selling, or she is thinking about selling. So essentially, position yourself in a way that the business owner will spend time talking to you, um, and build that relationship, because building a relationship is way more important than getting those questions answered.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So when you get either the employee or the owner to your house for the quote, you then just ask them questions to study what the business is about. When you identify deficiencies through your search prior, you basically are trying to understand what is the business lacking for you to be able to fill that void as a bigger value add in the form of a bigger value add play. Had you potentially will inquire the business, completely get it. How do you address the no docs? Like, a lot of mom and pop shops, right, and a lot of small businesses, they just don't have good bookkeeping, right? What are some of your approaches? Because that's like the number one thing I have people ask me when they're looking for businesses, and I can show you pictures
Yeah,
like of handwritten notebooks, right?
yeah,
Some of which, with a pen that doesn't even have ink anymore, because so you don't even understand what's written because the ink is not fluently
no,
coming out, right? So yeah, what are some of the things that you are doing to kind of close the gaps between what you see and what you know that you don't know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that is a great question. There's two way to address that. Number one, we are, and actually we're in the process of acquiring one just like that, just like what you're describing, bad books and all that. um, my strategy number one is to absorb them as an asset,
To what?
meaning
I'm sorry.
absorb them as an asset, merge them as an
Mhm.
asset,
Got it.
meaning I don't care about your books, but I know, like, just by the conversation, relationship build, I know that the peoples are good,
The
and
people, meaning the business owners.
the business owner and the current crew and whatnot are good.
Okay. Okay.
They will have understanding of how many clients they have, and how and what their account values are, and that is something that's straightforward that you can always find. Meaning, whether we have this clients, keep coming in for the past 5 years, and how much they typically spend for a year, and things like that. You don't necessarily need a PML to really figure it out, right? And so client list is your asset, the crew is your asset, the equipment is your asset. And when I have, for example, a landscaping company, I can just absorb those asset directly, right? If I know that with my system process I can just run better, I will just absorb the good things and scale the companies from there by acquiring the business, right? So that's strategy number one. And strategy number two is essentially, um, when you look at bad books, typically it will just give you an idea on, okay, there are actually lack of system processes. Now, this is what you should be thinking about. You should treat this company as a startup. If you were to buy the business with its current equipment, with the current infrastructure, real estate, and whatnot, as a startup, will you be able to run it profitable? Do you have some sort of unfair advantage that you can pull, either from the people you know, either from the money you have, either from the relationship that you have with the vendors or potential contractor, or do you just happen to have some magical contact that will basically skyrocket the business tenfold in a month, right? Those are things that you can be creative then, right? But basically two things: treat the business as a startup and think about what you will be able to do. as a startup. That's number one. Number two is if you happen to have a similar business, whether you can stack it up and just absorb the asset and you don't need to care about the books. Those are the two strategies that I have.
So consider it as a startup, uh, meaning see what are the things that you can use to make it grow fast, and the second one is just say, okay, they don't have any books. What can I do with whatever the business currently has?
Good questions. You can do a market study. And I actually did it for the laundromat that we acquire.
And what? I'm sorry.
I actually did it for the laundromat that we acquire. You do a market study.
Market study. Got it.
And what I mean by that is, yes, you may not be able to figure out the exact number, but you can figure out what is their service pricing, what is their product pricing, what are they selling for, and then do a research and see what their competitor are offering, right? If it's a laundromat, it's typically very local. You just drive around and look at the other laundromat, how much they're charging, and what's their foot traffics, and how much they're charging for a certain product and whatnot. A lot of time you can just sit there for 30 minutes and count the footprint, then compare with the business that you're trying to buy, compare the footprint. At the same time, you can also check, okay, what type of people are walking into this laundromat. Are they going in to do dry clean more, or are they actually just coming to do a self-serve laundry? It's a two different, client base, right? If it's more higher level, people who are doing dry clean, then you will know, okay, your main income source would be dry clean. Looking at the business you're trying to buy, looking at the laundromat you're trying to buy, does it have a good infrastructures for dry clean? Meaning, does it have a good dry cleaner relationship? What's your pricing? What's your cost base? Are you able to have a better margin because of the relationship or whatnot? Right? Start from there. Then you can evaluate whether this business is doing better or worse comparing to other people, and then also you can get ideas on what I can do to help to basically scale the business.
Yeah, it's all good stuff. All good stuff for sure. So at the end of the day, you are saying, let's just consider this as no books. Let's just say um, we're doing this as a startup, but a question that I usually have in the area of this type of a discussion is, okay, well, if he doesn't have books and he doesn't have a way to not just prove the income but also client base, then what am I actually buying? Right? Because as you know, a business value is one thing, right? Say you have X amount of income, you do the multiples, that's great. But in essence, if you have contracts with different different service contracts, then that's worth something. But if you can't prove who's your client base and what's your book of business, then in essence you're just buying cars and you're buying equipment, and they're
Exactly.
used, and you can buy 30 cents on the dollar in any auction.
Mhm.
So what are you actually buying, right?
We are paying if like in that scenario you
Like price wise, as Benjamin. So this is important to refine, because at the end of the day, if you have, just making this up, 5 trucks, right, and the truck is worth 10,000 each, used, that's $50,000,
Mhm.
right? And then you have equipment for $20,000, that's 70, and the guy wants 180, and he can prove how much clientele he has and the income. Then what are you actually buying?
Then if that's the case, the you are not on the same side of the table with the seller
Mm,
because the seller is trying to get money out of this transaction. they're not trying to help the business. It means that you don't have their money. It means that you don't have a good relationship with them. This is why they're asking for money only. When people don't know you, it's a
Hmm.
pure money transaction.
Got it.
And at the same time, when you are trying to evaluating how you want to structure the deals for this acquisition, and this is another thing we talk about in our Q&A Zoom, was where you should be taking risk. And risk means debt, right?
Hmm.
Like where you want to bring in equity, where you want to bring in debt. Meaning, um, okay, if the business is not producing this much, then you better not put debt behind it because you are likely won't be able to serve the debt, right?
Right. Yep.
So
So for the listeners to understand, because I completely understand what you're saying. I just want everyone else other than me and you, whoever's listening, to understand that serving the debt means that if they want $180,000 and you go ahead and you borrow SBA, which is the most common one for businesses, is a type of a loan. Let's say they'll tell you whatever SBA today. I think there's 90%, there's 80% programs. Let's just say you need to come up with, just for ease of numbers, $50,000 out of your pocket, and the loan is 130. That means that you're going to have an installment, which is the debt service that you have to pay towards that debt every single month. And what Benjamin is rightfully saying is, if that loan payment, I'm just making this up, is $5,000 a month, and the business is only making three, then you are upside down. You're not making enough money to serve the debt. And like any business, the purpose, core function, is to make money, not to lose money, right? So that's what we mean. Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important. A lot of people lose track of that. So your strategy, which is a very wise one, is to not incur the debt to begin with from the bank or the loan, and say to the seller, okay, you want 180,000, fine. Once you, to your words, go around the table and sit next to him and not in front of him, you're both on the same side of the table, understanding their pressure points. Give me a sell finance, sell a note, where I don't have to borrow money. You're functioning as the bank, and you are basically not making installment. You guys
yes,
profit, right?
yeah. So I guess what I was referring was, even if it's a seller finance note, it's a debt, right? So unless the seller can just give you a crazy good term, meaning you can pay me $1 in the next 2,000 years, right? Something like that, then you essentially just don't have that pressure. But what I was referring to is when you have the equity and you have the debt that you can play with, if there's a cash flow that back, for the payment, then use that. Either it's bank debt, SBA debt, seller debt, or you bring in a PMA or whatnot. Use that, right? But if you don't have that cash flow backed up, you should use equity. What does it mean? You should have someone bring in the money if that truly costs the money to actually run the business. Let me break it down even further. If you have a business that doesn't produce that much of cash flow, and the seller need a certain price point, you need to understand why. And if you have a good relationship and everything that we talk about, you should be able to understand why. It may have oh, seller has a medical bill to pay and whatnot. Okay, I understand that. Then you like that's a reason, that's a challenge for you to figure out and be creative about. But if the seller is like, oh, I believe my business just worth this. This is why I need to get paid this. I said, okay, great. Why don't you be my partners? I
Hmm.
will come in and run it while you own 40% of it, doing nothing. And if we can run the business well, we will use the revenue to pay you until that amount is fully paid off as a distribution. And the money and the point that we pay it off, the 40% of ownership will basically return. That is using equity. Essentially, you are making the seller to be your equity partners because they believe in the value of the business, and you just simply fairly requesting that, okay, if that's the case, that's running together, and I'm going to put in a lot of effort and all that, and just try to have the business pay for that amount. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then he's not getting the money, right? So again, it's very important to understand equity and debt and when you should use them to be risk managed, right? Like we're all investors. We don't worry about taking on risk. We are worrying about whether the risk is managed or not.
Calculate a risk, to your
Exactly.
point. And that's a great strategy, and that's really really valuable for the listeners to hear that it's all about deal structure, which we're not going to dive too deep, but there's different ways to mitigate risk by structuring deal in a safer way, right? To bypass some of those dangers, such as not knowing exactly what the data is. For example, the revenue, like you said, if the revenue is there, you get paid. If the revenue is not there, you can't, because there's nothing to pay you out of. So that's a great strategy. And just to add on top of that is that unless you are on the same side of the table to your words as the seller, you don't really know the pressure points. For example, it could be that it's making money, but he just did an operation he never quite recovered from, so he's not in the health to run it, and he believes that he knows in his heart that this is making money. He
Yeah.
just simply run it. So you come as an operator and you tell him, okay, well, if you believe it so much, you know let's structure it that way. So these are just wonderful tactics, for sure. Can you tell our listeners where do you do your Q&A Zoom you mentioned, and how can they jump on it?
Sorry, Doran, you were cut off a little bit. Can you repeat your question, please?
You mentioned a few times. Can you hear me well now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes.
You have Q&A Zooms.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how our listeners can find them and listen in?
Yeah, sure. So basically, you just DM me directly on IG, DM me Q&A, and it will basically show up a link for you to join our weekly Q&A. We run a weekly Q&A on Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. So be free to jump on if you are doing active acquisitions. Come on in, ask me any question you have, and I would love to help you any way I can. In addition, if you have a acquisition that you think it's sensitive, you don't want it to be discussed with a group of people, then you can also find the info on my IG. You can schedule a one-on-one consulting sessions with me, where you will provide information to me, and I will prepare and get all the strategy layouts ready before the meeting. So in any case, I'm trying to basically help you to get your first or next business acquisition done in a safe way.
Wonderful. So sending a Q&A keyword in your DMs on your IG account,
Yes.
which is on the bottom of your screen. Um, and I think that people got a lot to think about, and I think that at the end of the day, they should definitely check out your Zooms, because they can expand on knowledge even beyond this Zoom. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your knowledge with our listeners, and always great to see you.
Lawrence, I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me.